Shalom, everyone.
Shalom, brother.
Today we're going to be dealing with, still staying in the same vein of the, how we've been dealing with the law and the new versus the old covenant, and even dealing with Paul's writings. But today we're going to deal with Romans chapter 7. We're going to go into it, this chapter that Paul wrote, and make some sense of it. Today's going to be a shorter class because we're just dealing with this chapter in specific. It's kind of a short chapter, but I think it's important to gain understanding on this chapter because this chapter can be used by those who are unlearned to try to lead someone astray concerning what it is that Paul is talking about. So by studying the precepts, we understand that Christ taught that we are to keep the law. And knowing this, it is important to be able to read Paul and understand his writings. We know that Paul would never contradict Christ, so he would never teach something contradictory concerning the law. So today we will deal with the entire chapter of Romans 7 and bring clarity to his writings concerning the law. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Let's go to Romans 7, verse 1.
Romans chapter 7, verse 1. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Okay,
so Paul is he's making it clear here who he's speaking to. He says, first off, know ye not, brethren. And we know that Paul was an Israelite. And so when he refers to brethren, he's referring to other Israelites that he is speaking to. So he is in this writing, he is writing to other Israelites. And he further, we further understand this by the fact that he then goes on and he says, for I speak to them that know the law. Who knew the law? Israel knew the law. All right. And so he's speaking about the law here. So the thing to understand in this chapter is that Paul, he's addressing the law, and he goes from addressing the law in general down to bringing out specific points out of the law. And if without that understanding, then you can be deceived about what Paul is talking about. And so that's what I want to bring to light in this chapter. But he's saying, ye know, brethren, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. And it's not talking about a man meaning man versus woman. It's talking about man and woman, meaning the species of man, the creation of man. All right. So continue with verse 2.
Verse 2. For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loosed from the law of her husband.
Okay. So in the first sentence, in the first verse, he says, ye know how the law has dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Saying, as long as a man liveth, the law is his governor, or it rules over him. And it's speaking in the broad sense of the law. The whole law is what he's talking about. Now, as we get to verse 2, he starts to bring out a specific law within the whole law, or within the whole Mosaic law. And he starts to speak of the law of marriage. So notice that Paul is specifically speaking of the law of marriage here. He pulls out a specific law to further illustrate that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. And he's about to show you how he's about to use the law of marriage as an example to show how it has dominion so long as he lives. Go ahead with verse 3.
Verse 3. So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man.
I'm sorry, brother. Can you read that one more time? I had a slight interruption.
Verse 3. So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress.
So it's saying if she be married to another man, she be called an adulteress.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if she is to lay with another man other than her husband, then that is she is committing adultery. Continue.
Okay. Verse 3, I'm going to start at the top.
Okay, go ahead.
So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man.
So the law of marriage declares so long as a woman's husband lives, she is bound to that man and can have no other man, lest she be called an adulteress. So here it is. We start out with Paul talking about how man is governed by the law as long as he liveth. And now he's specifically showing you an example of this. Mm-hmm. He's going into the law of marriage, and he's showing you that if a woman were to lay with or to have another husband, then while her husband still lived, then she would be considered an adulteress. Mm-hmm. Because her husband has not died, the law still applies. But then it goes on and it says, however, if he pass away and then she decides to be with another man, that is lawful because he no longer liveth. So the law no longer has dominion over him. All right, continue with verse 4.
Verse 4. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ, that ye be married to another.
That ye should, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, brother. That ye should be married to another, even to him who has raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto the Most High.
Exactly. So now he's speaking to Israel, his brethren, right? Which were considered the wife of the Most High. Mm-hmm. So he's chaining this together. You know, Paul is teaching. And so in this teaching, he has to start at one point, and at the point that he starts with is how, as long as a man liveth, he's governed by the law. Mm-hmm. Now, what he adds on to that chain is he brings out a specific law to illustrate his point. Mm-hmm. That specific law he brings out to illustrate his point is the law of marriage, and how a wife is bound to her husband so long as her husband lives. Unless he passes, then she can choose to be with to find another husband, because the law no longer is holds her bound to him, because he's no longer governed by the law because he passed. Now he goes in on verse 4 and he says, "Ye are also become dead to the law by the body of Christ." He's speaking to Israel, as we know before, because he addressed his brethren, those who know the law. So he's telling Israel, you have become dead to the law by the body of Christ. Mm-hmm. And as we know, Israel was considered the Most High's wife. Now let's get a precept on that so that you're not taking my word for it. Let's go to Jeremiah 31. Hold Romans, because we're going to be dealing with the whole chapter of Romans. Mm-hmm. So if we cut away from it, continue to hold Romans, because we're coming back to it. But for now, let's go to Jeremiah 31. And verse 32 to illustrate the point that Israel was the wife of the Most High.